Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my YouTube site. And decided to become a little more regular with these spotcasts, as I'm going to call them. This time, I'm going to talk about cinema. There's a question that somebody sent me through email, and what they wanted to know is they saw one old film, an older Tamil film, and they didn't connect with it. They said the writing was a little all over the place, and the exact thing that they said was. Uh, Individually brilliant scenes, but somehow they cut across one plot point to another without having a proper flow. I could be wrong, but in your experience, have you ever felt an old movie not living up to its expectations, yours and the general populations? And then do you look at it in the prism, especially the technical facets of movies of that era, and how do you do it then by watching classics of that era? This is a great question because a lot of the time, what happens is we are told, for example, that I'll just take Citizen Kane because it just randomly is everybody talks about it, right? So we're told that wow, such a great movie and all that. But the first time we see it, and by we I mean anybody who's about like at least 30, 40, 50 years removed from it, the first time they see it, they're going to be like, what is this film and why is it so reputed? One reason is, at least from an Indian point of view, it is a, a differently paced and a differently made film, right? So we are used to, at least we grow up in our younger years with fast commercial films that spell everything out. So here you have a film where everything is a particular way, like every place is huge, every room is huge, and it dwarfs the people. There's all these angles that have now become cliches, but at that time were groundbreaking. And I come to my first point, which is that it is important to see movies of that time to know why Citizen Kane is important. Or let's take Indian films like Kaagaz Ke Phul, for example. It is the first CinemaScope film in India, made in India, Gurudutt's film. And to know what is so important about it, if you look at the lighting techniques like today, from today's point of view, you will probably notice that a lot of it is already like in place, right? Like what's so great about it. But then you have to see the films of that era to know what it is. So I'm going to bring forth my second point, which is that, see, liking films as a general viewer is a very different thing, right? It's like you're just watching films because you want to be entertained, whatever it is. That's like casual stuff. So you don't care. I mean, like I'm not even going to bring up that point to you because you're watching movies just because you have some time, you want something to engage you, you're going to watch whatever, right? But the second category, that is the smaller in population category, is people who watch films as something. They're cinephiles, they want to watch it as a medium of art, they want to get something out of it, they want to engage with it. Now for this, you have to realize that it's a bit like being a doctor, in the sense that, or maybe a CA or whatever it is. It's like you have to constantly keep watching films and educating yourself. It's a non-stop education, right? It's a non-stop education in two ways, both sides of the timeline. One is you have to keep watching newer films, not just the ones made in India, but the ones made in the world, so that you know where cinema is going, because that's where a lot of the young directors in India get their inspiration from, and therefore the editing patterns changes, or the cinematography ideas come from, or the narration styles change. The second thing is you have to go back and get a sense of historical films, because if you are to put this movie, this particular movie that this person raised a question about was Varumai Niram Sivappu, right? You have to go back to the 70s and watch movies from that era. And of course, today everything is on YouTube, so there is no real reason for us not to watch these films. So once you see movies of the 70s, the non, like let's say, because Varameneram Silva came up in this email, if you see the non Balachandar movies versus some of the Balachandar movies, you will see why this in the 70s was a big deal. So what I'm saying is, yes, from today's viewpoint, everything that came before a certain time is going to seem a little, I don't know if I should use this word, but maybe dated, or odd, or not like I don't know, fast enough or whatever it is. But fast should not be a question for you, because if you like cinema for cinema's sake, then fast and slow and all should not be like, you can't say things like, this film has too much lag and stuff like that. That's not done. But you have to educate yourself, and part of this education is watching films of a particular time and getting an idea of how much uh, that thing means, what it meant, and why it's a big deal. And like, I'm going to go back and give you an example of, there's this Tamil director Sridhar, and I kind of, never got why he was such a big deal, because I grew up in the, cinema started for me in the like early 80s is when I started really watching like cinema, with some kind of mid 80s probably. So, Balachandar, yes. Bharati Raja, yes. Mahindran, yes. Balu Mahindra, yes. All those people, yes. But I mean, I could get what was happening there, and kind of, even if I didn't know the words to articulate what I was seeing, I knew my brain was processing that this is not like your usual commercial fare that's being released in the theaters, right? But Sridhar, what is it? It's like I'm watching Kadalikan Eremelai. Yes, it's an entertaining film, but why is he placed on that pedestal? Like, because there are a lot of people making entertaining films, right? So one of the great fortunes, good fortunes that I had in the early part of my career is I had the opportunity to interact with K. Balachandar a bunch of times, and that man could really talk, and he was wonderful and wonderfully accommodating. Of I was still in a very early stage of my career, so I asked him, and the great thing is, Balachandar was like, he was coming of age as a moviegoer when Sridhar was making his films. So he was just the right target audience that Sridhar was hitting. And he said, Sridhar actually pioneered two things. One is he pioneered the fact that the fact that camera could be moved and used in a bunch of different ways. For example, before they were mostly studio made movies, and the camera wouldn't go outdoors much, and because they were the big cameras and all that. But in Kalyana Parasu, for instance, you have Gemini Ganeshan and Saroja Devi in that song. They're both cycling in the outdoors, and they're constantly cycling, which means that there's a camera mounted on a car or a van or something like that, and it's following them. And that kind of outdoor cinematography was something that they had never seen before, that Balachandar had never seen before. Then he said another thing, which is that earlier films, the dialogues used to be in a particular, very formal kind of Tamil, and Sridhar kind of broke that, and made the Tamil very accessible to kind of youngsters, especially in films like Tenilavu. So you talk to somebody who's been to that through that era, and your kind of mind opens up a little, because now you're able to give a little bit of context to what is happening in that film. So so this is not again to say, so I'm not saying you should like Kagas Ke Phool, or you should like Kalyana Parsu, or you should like Varumai Niram Sivapu, or whichever film I'm talking about. There's no should like, right? But if you want to see it with that perspective, it is very important to watch films of that era, uh, get an idea of the style, get an idea of what thing. Because one more thing that I really think is important is, you should not feel pressure to like any filmmaker. Like, there are a lot of people who'll say, anything old, they'll just say from the 1960s classic something, and it won't have been a classic, it would have been a critical flop, it would have been a commercial flop, but everything is called a classic, right? If it comes from a particular time. No, it's actually, you're free to reject it. You don't have to like it, but you have to know why that thing was made that particular way. And I think that's why, it's important to kind of keep track of older and newer films. So if you want to watch a particular film, maybe read up something about it. I don't know, like the style and other things. Uh, Also, there is no one particular style of screenwriting, which is something that this person brought up in his email. There is no one particular style, right? So there's like for instance, in our mass hero movies, we're not looking at one through line. We're basically looking at something that provides a bunch of, you know, entertainment for the stars audience. So like we're not looking at like proper, like what you would look at in a more serious movie. what you would look at in a more serious movie. So that's important to know, right? Like, what is this thing going about? When I see Varmanidam Silpa, I don't have the problem that this person has, because I think maybe because it is that style is ingrained in my mind, so I'm not able to, like, I'm not really finding it odd, let's say. I'm not finding it weird, but I can very much see why, like, for a much younger person, this would seem a deal breaker. So, how do you prevent this from being a deal breaker? Is by, I guess, reading a lot, by constantly educating yourself on cinema. And I use the word education very deliberately, because one thing that people, there are so many people blogging, podcasting, YouTubing about cinema, and you find them, and I don't know if this is something that people, you really find it so uh, generic. They use words like staging, screenwriting, editing, this, that, but when you look at what they're actually saying, or they praise the writing of some movie or something like that, but if you look at the questions they ask, or if you look at, the observations that they make, or if, or if it's a review, if you look at the review or whatever it is, sometimes you find that they're not really justifying what they mean. But because that is the most important thing. When you say something, you have to justify why you think X aspect of a film is good. If the cinematography is good, what do you mean? What is that aspect of goodness? What is the philosophy of the cinematography that you have noticed? Now, you don't have to reflect the actual philosophy that the director and the cinematographer notice. That's a different thing, because that is hidden, right? When we watch a movie, the movie becomes ours. It becomes mine when I'm watching it. So what is my mind processing, and how am I conveying it to you? That becomes a very important thing. So I think that's again something that's it's important to to kind of be aware of. And I think asking these questions, like, is a good first step, because just like this person asked me, I've asked, my seniors, and I'm sure those seniors have asked their seniors. So that's kind of a I don't know, oral knowledge transfer, I guess. So when that happens, is when you're kind of, when you when like, for instance, a lot of people, youngsters, come to me and say, I really don't see why Nayakan is such a big deal. But then, it's very hard to explain, because, with all these movies, just like I wasn't there when Sridhar made those movies, and, like, I wasn't able to crack that why is he a big deal phenomenon until Balachandra explained to me much later. I think, all these things, they're a bit of a knowledge transfer to kind of know. And I think that's what's really important. I think it's important to know what the context is, and to kind of, like to kind of have some respect and humility. Like, today what we're doing is always, like, we're eager to tear down movies, right? It's like we're just like, okay, it doesn't work, and it's like, so it's like, ha ha ha, it's so funny, this, that, and all that. But nobody really actively sets out to make bad movies. Maybe the movie isn't bad, we haven't understood yet, either because we are not the right age, don't have the right maturity, we don't have the right cinematic education to understand it, or something like that. Maybe that's it. So that's also a factor that you have to like put inside this, because what is this that is making this movie inaccessible to me, is a good question to ask of yourself. It means that this person who sent me this email is a genuine film lover, and I just love him for it, because it's like, you have to really love film. You can't just, you have to feel it, you have to, like, really like it. You can't just go and say this is nice, this is not nice, whatever it is. You have to understand. It's almost like being a surgeon. You have to, like, tear the body open, find out what the inner workings are, and kind of see what the film is trying to do, or trying, a kind of a thing. One of the nicest compliments I got recently was from a filmmaker whose film I did not give a good review to, but that person acknowledged one thing, that he says, I agree with your thing, because that was his first film, and he said that was nice. But he said, uh, I agree with your assessment of it, but I'm glad that you got what we were trying to do, and that made me feel very nice, because the validation from a filmmaker, because, like, I'm not saying that I'm the first person to say that the author's voice is not the only voice or the important voice, but in this case, so when somebody says that, yes, you kind of got what I wanted to do, that feels nice, because that means that you are in sync with something that's happening on screen, right? So I think that happens only through repeatedly, like watching films, educating yourself. A long time back I gave an interview that I watch a number of movies a month, and they made that the headline of the thumbnail, which is like, he watches 40 movies a month or something like that. Now imagine you have a job, right? You have a, let's say you work 8 hours. For me, that this is my job. So if I'm working 8 hours a day, watching two movies a day is not a big deal, because I'm looking at 2.5 hours times two, which is 5 hours. So five into, like, let's, like, into a month of, let's say, even 25 is, that's 75 hours of movie watching. So no, I don't know if I did the math right, but then math is not my strong suit, right? So but yeah, that's what it is. It's like asking the question yourself is like, why is this movie not working? And that's the first step also to good criticism, is first going watching a movie and asking that question, why is this movie working, or why is this movie not working? And I think that is the most important first step that anyone can take. And I'm glad I got this email, because it made me want to start this on a regular basis again. I hope you enjoyed it. So give me your feedback, and also if you have any questions, do let me know, and see you next time.